Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media production. And our second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. And for the next month, we're going to be doing more labs. Less of a presentation and more of us just fiddling about. So we're going to talk about keynote. We're going to talk about countdown clocks and how I build them in Motion. So we'll talk a little bit about how I approach that. And maybe you might be able to use it in your own projects, but you can ask questions about that. And we won't be moving at a very fast pace. And if we get to the end of it, then we'll go back to questions. So it's going to be a little more casual. So stay tuned for that in the second hour. And in the first hour, if you want to ask questions, go ahead and throw those into Makana. If you're not in Makana, if you're just watching this, you can ask questions by going to askofficehours.global. And so go to askofficehours.global, and you can ask those questions there, and you can ask them 24/7. So, in fact, I think we got like, I don't know, 5 or 10 questions. And there's a little QR code that you can use as well. So you can use the QR code, or you can just go to askofficehours.global. I think about half of our questions today are coming from that. So it's definitely picking up speed. And you can ask them anytime you think of it. You don't have to worry about when we're going to reset our system, how we're going to do that. It goes into a kind of a big tank, and then I bring them in as we can throughout the show. So let's go ahead and jump into the first question. Bill, what do we have?
Our first one, which is a QR code question, comes in from Jens Olson in Sandpoint, Idaho. And Jens asks, did anyone else catch this event was shot on iPhone and credit in yesterday's Apple announcement?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
The short answer is yes. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about it, a lot of news articles, and some videos that have behind the scenes videos showing how they shot with the iPhone 15, which
Where are
is
the
really
behind?
cool.
Did Apple post those?
Apple posted them. A couple of the products that came with it, they had some side posted. Let's see, where'd that one come from? I can't.
Yeah.
Jonas posted one on a group that we're with, and I don't know where that's coming from. So
Talk about burying the lead. I mean, I think that of all the things that we were the most excited about, and it's not just me, Marquez Brownlee, Justine Ezerick, myself, all these, everyone was like, and Renee Ritchie on another forum that I was on, we're all just like, like they shot the whole thing on an iPhone. We kept on, people would talk about them shooting on an iPhone, but you're like, oh, they won't do that. They'll just keep shooting these on Aries. And then they shot one with an iPhone. And I wonder whether the reason that they shot it at night was just to show off, like literally to just go, well, yeah, we use an iPhone and we did it at night, like it was a whole bunch of night shots. I don't know if it may not turn out there was any other good reason other than to show that the iPhone can shoot a lot of footage in dark. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I won't complain about my other problem that you and I were talking about last night. But I do think what's interesting about the graphic is it says this event was shot on iPhone, edited on Mac. But this little sentence down here, the presenters, locations, and drone footage shot on iPhone Pro 15 Pro Max. The question then, why are they?
Because they have a lot of CG in there.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the reason.
I made the comment before the show that I would guess that unless you see an Apple product in a human's hand, I bet you every Apple product we've seen for about the last 10 years at least would be CG. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the product, unless they're in their hands, and even sometimes when they're in their hands, but
chips. We're gonna
I mean, we've done that a lot. I mean, I haven't done it for Apple, but we've done it for other products where you're holding. We have you hold something that is exactly the right shape, but we're not done with it yet, and then we track it back in and roto it in, and it works. I mean, it's not perfect. Like I was noticing, we were watching Ted Lasso. There's these logos on Ted Lasso, on the coach that left the team or whatever, and he's got this jacket with these logos. And in the third season, about halfway through, he's standing up, and I realized the logos are sliding. I'm like, oh my gosh, they added the logos later. Like they added those logos after they shot it. It didn't work. It didn't work. It was like I was like, ooh. So they slide a little bit. But to get back to the iPhone, I mean, I think that was a pretty interesting show of force, of using a phone for, for all of those things. And I hope they really, I mean, sounds like they put some behind the scenes. I hope they really break it down, because that would be a really, I think they'd get more views on that than they might get on the release. I mean, the release was fine. I mean, it's faster computers, and I mean that's good, and I'm sure that's all fine and dandy. But the end credit, that end credit is what everybody paid attention to,
So,
in the product. Yeah.
Alex, one question for you, because you have a very critical eye, as we all know. When you were watching it, because you said burying the lead, they didn't say, oh, by the way, we're gonna show you a
Admittedly,
little video here. It was shot on a phone. When you were watching it, did you see anything that you didn't like?
Yeah, the opening shot with Tim Cook, I was like, what happened to that shot? Like I did think the opening shot was not very impressive. Like, didn't look like an Apple shot. So I was like, like it just felt very underwhelming. Like, and I think part of it was that the background was more in focus, and there was more stuff, and but I felt like that the opening shot, I don't think there was any other place that it really jumped out for me, but it definitely jumped out for me in the very opening shot with Tim Cook, that it felt like a lower quality shot. And I remember thinking that right when it happened, not knowing that it was an iPhone, just going, I wonder what happened there. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I'm waiting for the next disclaimer, which says edited on a MacBook Air while on public transit. That's going to be the next stage, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
I was just going to say that a poorly lit airy shot and a very well lit and composited shot with an iPhone, they could come together at some point. But what's interesting about it all is that with the right gear and the right lighting and the right artist, you can make those iPhone look pretty darn good.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This is great. And is this Chris? Is this on the Apple? Is this posted by Apple?
No, it's not. It's TWIMG. It was Mickey sent me the link.
The ad agency. Interesting enough, the one guy talking there, I think, is Steve Wozniak's son. Is it? So anyway, yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it's interesting when you can take that $1,200 phone and mount it in $30,000 worth of support gear and get a shot out of it.
Oh, we used to have fun with it, because when we did when we used to do a lot of Hangouts for Google, we would send pictures to each other, like $500,000 equipment on the other side of the camera, and go, because Hangouts are easy. so like, like they, like it's, and yeah, so yep. That's a good video. So yeah, we'll have to take a look at that in detail.
Chris, can you post a link in the chat so that we can?
Yeah, it's good.
Sure.
It's good chat. Yeah, so I think that I do think that there's some, like, what was it? Tangerine was the first movie shot on it. By the way, pretty visionary to build a movie on an iPhone. I think it was like a 3GS or something like that, and to do one just so that you can, for the next century, you can always say the first movie shot on shot on an iPhone was Tangerine. But I think that now you could shoot some pretty interesting things with an iPhone. It's going to be, I mean, I know that the quality, as far as news gathering and everything else, I think that I can see why they're kind of moving that direction. But yeah, so all of us noticed it was a pretty interesting puzzle. So we'll see how it goes. I can tell you, as someone who has an iPhone 15 Max or whatever, I really have a hard time justifying I take other cameras, like I'm going to shoot video, and then I just end up using my phone. Like I'm just kind of like, now we're doing live events and we're doing production. I still obviously use production cameras. We have some Blackmagic 12Ks and some 6Ks and lots of other things. And so for live, I'm still using those. But when I'm just shooting footage for things that I need, I've had a hard time justifying using something else. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to say, the last 2 years, I've shot all of my corporate work with the exception of one project on my iPhones. And that one project, when I took out the Blackmagic 6K, just because somebody said, can you bring the bigger camera, because this is going to be hard, I didn't like it as much. I didn't like the imagery as much. Now, it may be that I was just it was a challenging shoot. It was a thing at the Rady Shell, and it was outdoors, and there was really harsh shadows and bright sunlight, and not a beautiful background. Parts of it were beautiful, but it was really hard to get exposure things. But it was harder than the computational video out of my iPhone that takes into consideration all those split focuses and really works on making a composite image that looks really good. So that pushed me even farther into, it's gonna be tough to get me to reach for a different camera unless there's really something compelling. There can be. I mean, if I'm in a circumstance where I need a lot of audio support or something like that, yeah. But
Oh, and I think that I think that behind the scenes is really useful as well, because it does show you that, like, and then you're still using professional equipment around it. Like, you're not, it's not like you're just shooting it with your, just handheld.
It's like you got a techno crane and a
it's
Sparrow
awesome.
mount and a remote head.
It's not like Justine is sitting there holding her pink.
Well, I
iPhone.
mean, that's exactly what I mean.
Action,
If you go back and look at the video, I think I reposted it on my YouTube channel. But if you go back and look, when the 3GS came out, which was a brand new, when the 3GS came out, I immediately ran back to the office, cobbled together just a random bits and bobs that we had for real cameras, and threw the 3GS on it and said, "This is going to be the future." And that was, I don't know, it was 2008 or 9, so 12 or 13 years ago, or 14 years ago. And so I was, but I was like, this is it. But of course, none of that worked at the time. So, by the way, we don't have a question for this, but I think we talked about this in the last. Where did I put it now? I want to confirm if I can figure. Oh yeah, if I want to confirm. We talked about this in After Hours, I think. But I wanted to confirm that Jeff Keithley was correct in saying that this Avio USB-C does work with Dante to the phone. So this little guy is PoE on one side and USB-C on the other. By the way, it also charges the phone. Like, I didn't realize it would actually. Like, I looked at my phone. My phone was like, "I'm taking charge." Yeah. I was like. Now you have a phone charger it's a phone charger that carries Dante. So anyway, but this is, but the reason I bring this up in this conversation is now you're able to actually deliver very high quality audio to the phone as well. So it's just something to kind of consider in that process. Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer is up next from Viera, Florida, and Andy says, testing the new Candeo Meeting Ultra in office this week. This promotes eye contact with remote attendees. What questions would you ask staff and or focus groups? And he's got a link.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Do you only use it with people with very long arms? Oops, sorry. That would be a very long arm. Because it's a touchscreen, and these are people around a conference table, because it's designed with a Insta360 type camera sitting here on top, and they're pulling their individual pictures out of that, and it's a touchscreen. The girl on the left and the girl on the right would have to have 6-foot long arms if they were going to touch something on the screen to do something, and they're awfully close together, and you'd have to have a pretty small conference table to put this in the middle and work both sides of it. So I don't see a keyboard or a mouse with anyone, so I think there would be some limitations there in its use in a conference situation the way they've designed it. It would have to be a fairly small table, and you'd have to be pretty close to each other and across the table from each other with that device. And I would suggest using it, not promoting it as a touchscreen so much as, using a normal keyboard and mouse, wireless keyboard and mouse with it.
Go, Jeffrey.
So I've tested a couple of these. They're just basically standalone cameras that do the AI, and there's a couple I have downstairs that can do up to 7 faces at the same time because of the lens and of course the display or the view of the lens there, which I think is. I'm not sure about this one, but you can get to about 150 degrees or more. And the cool thing about it was with those cameras, you could move around and it would still detect you. You could cross the paths and it still know exactly who it was. So I'm guessing that this is going to do the same thing. But as Courtney said, it's very static, so you got to be around the table. That's for sure. But I think that it's not the best technology. We probably wouldn't use it for something like this. But if you're in a regular conference call, it'd be nice to have something where you could hook up external like lav mics to each person. But other than that, I think it would be a great conference item.
Yeah, go, John.
Every one of these proprietary pieces of hardware die. They're worthless. I think conference rooms are over. Everybody set up a good workstation at their desk, and they can talk all in Zoom from their desk.
Yeah, I have to admit that I think you have to really rethink like redesigning conference rooms to make this work. Like rather than, I think that I mean, I get it, I get it. Everyone's trying to figure out how. I mean, you've got a 360 camera, and you're going to figure out how to cobble together something. You know, this is definitely when you have a hammer, everything's a nail. You know, so you've got Kando makes Candeo or Kando makes 360 cameras. And they're like, well, let's figure out how to sell more of them. You know, and so selling kind of hobbled office managers, things that things that they can kind of stick together so that their conference rooms aren't as bad as they really are. I get it. There's a business there. There's business to basically paper over the fact that all the conference rooms were not built for what we're doing. There are a handful of them. I've definitely worked with companies who built their conference rooms around video conferencing. And when they did that, and I don't mean put something at the end of the room, they built it. There's actually a company in St. Louis. I'll just leave it at that right now. But when I work with them, everything that sounds good, it looks good, and they're like, "Yeah, we paid attention to that when we built it." It's like it was, and the whole thing looks that way, and it feels comfortable talking to them. So it's not impossible to do this. It is impossible to retrofit all glass conference rooms and make them actually work. Like that's not going to work. And you need to rip them out and put ones in that actually make sense. I will say that after our experience with the Final Cut user group, the Final Cut virtual user group, I really think that building them kind of in the, not in the round, but in some kind of less geometric box sense, and put the cameras on the outside, shooting in, may make more sense than what we're doing right now. Only because it really now the problem is you get occlusions and everything else. You put them in the center of anyway, I just think that the conference room thing is, as John said, I think is dead. And it's just going to slowly, we're going to see people try to tape over it for a while, but it's going to slowly wind itself out. Next question.
Lois Richter is in Davis, California, and coming to us with this question. What's the quality difference between iPhone's main camera and its selfie camera? On a Zoom call, would that matter? And how much does Zoom reduce resolution?
Yeah, I don't know what the selfie camera resolution is now. I think it is still considerably less than the main camera. So the main camera is, I don't know if it's a really effective, but I think that the selfie camera was for quite some time only delivering 720p. And the main camera, I believe, was doing 1080p. And also, I mean, the main camera has a 48 megapixel capability, where the selfie, I think, is still 12 megapixel, if I remember correctly. And it was, I think that I think it could make a difference if you're shooting something. I wouldn't want to shoot something I want to use with the selfie camera, but I think that if you're on Zoom, the amount of work it would take to use the other camera would not be worth it. So I think but I think that you have been for a long time, or for a lot of time, I think you've been limited to a 720p signal when you use the selfie camera, but I'm not 100% sure that that's the case right now.
48 megapixels for the main, 12 megapixels for the selfie, it looks like.
Right, and 12 megapixels is enough for 1080p video, so that's much lower. But I don't think that for some reason, I don't think that the selfie was delivering 1080p, at least in the past, and I haven't tested it from the phone. When I'm on the phone, I just assume I'm going to use the selfie camera. So, and when we bring people in, we assume that they're going to use that. But for a long time, at least until the last couple of years, it was a 720p signal out of the selfie and a 1080p out of the main camera. So we should take a look at that. Next question.
Al Trivet in Carmichael, California. What are the reactions to Apple's M3 hardware releases?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I laughed, I cried, I swooned. I'm not sure. I mean, it's great that they came out with it, but they put it in the wrong machines. You're typically expecting that the top of the line high-end Mac, the Mac Pro, would end up with the M3, but that was not the case. They stuck it in other machines that you would not necessarily have anticipated. We talked a little bit about this on After Hours last night, and I know Alex has a very definite opinion on it, but I think I'm one of those confused people, Alex.
You go, Bill.
Yeah, I think part of the reason is I/O stuff, and this is what I'm thinking, because I remember the M2s came out, the MacBook Airs first, and then they migrated to the larger laptops. And I'm wondering if it's just having to plumb in all that connectivity. You know, I'm sitting here in front of a MacBook Pro, and I've got like, it's driving 5, 6, 7 screens. It's got all sorts of AirPlay and other things coming in and out of it. It's a very complex internal design machine. The Air, which I have sitting over here, I pulled it out of the studio because somebody asked me what color it was. This has 2 ports, and that's it. So without a port extender, it just doesn't have as complex an internal arrangement. So I'm wondering if the reason they put those newer chips into the simpler machines was it just took less engineering work to get there. And then as they continue the engineering work to plumb all the rest of the octopus out of it, they make those decisions to bring it down to the, or bring it up to the more confusing or more complex rigs.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think when it comes to these types of decisions, more often than not, and by more often than not, I mean probably always, they are decisions made from a marketing standpoint and not from an engineering standpoint. You got to remember, Apple is a $3 trillion business, depending on market cap, depending on what day of the week you're looking at their stocks. Excuse me. And that's not by accident. So I think these are marketing things. And it's very easy for us to say, I need it in my machine. Of course you do. And so does everybody else is saying the same thing. And Apple is saying, we can make more money if we do it this way. Let's do it this way.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice little speed bump. You know, it bumped up the speed over the M2s, the previous releases. And I like the fact that they are listening to some of their users out there and adding additional ports like HDMI ports and an SD card slot to the sides of the Mac Pros. So MacBook Pros. I think they're reserving the Mac Pro, the desktop, for an Ultra M3 Ultra, or you know, they didn't announce that type of chip that has two of the Mac's chips on the same die, like they did with the previous M2s. So, or is it M1? I think is the Mac Pro, the current Mac Pro, have an M2 chipset in it? I'm not sure. Same as the Studio. But anyway, so I thought it was a limited improvement, but nothing's changed architecture-wise, really. They added a couple of cores, moved a few cores around from performance to economical to energy conservation, etc. But it's basically the same with about a 15 to 20% boost over the last year's models.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. You know, the one thing that they kept saying, that the 2 parts, which goes in line with what Chris just said, is that the M3 chips, the 3-nanometer chips, were a lot harder to produce at this point in time. And as far as I've not seen any news article saying anything about the production going back to some sort of normalcy. So they're pretty much hedging their bets that people really need the MacBook Pros, really need the iMacs over the iPads or anything like that. So I'm still guessing that we're not going to see an M3 iPad until maybe March of next year, if not a little bit later. But we'll see what happens there. But I'm fairly impressed that they brought out 3 different chips, and I can't wait to see how many dies they can put together to make like the ultimate supercomputer that you could put into your bag.
Yeah, and I think that if you're an M2 owner, I don't think that you're the target market for this that presentation. The presentation is really, hey, look at how much faster it is than an M1, and most importantly, look at how faster it is than an Intel, 11 times faster than an Intel. So it is driving home to the folks that, I mean, and when we say Intel, my laptop,
a 5-year-old Intel. That's what they're talking.
My laptop, which was the last version of Intels that were released, is right here, and I'm still using it. And I have to admit, I looked at it and I was like, well, 11 times faster. I may want to start thinking about a new laptop, but not yet. But it adds pressure. But that's what they're selling to. They're not selling to M2 owners. They're selling to Intel owners that are still hanging on to their Intel machines and going, it can be a lot faster. Life can be a lot better, for this. And so I think that's really where because that's where the sales are for them. I do think that it's weird to not release all of them at the same time. It's weird. It's not a good experience I don't think it's a good experience for customers to have bought Studios and Mac Pros and then have slower chips than the laptops. I think that Apple will eventually have to sync this up where they're all getting released at the same time. And at some point, they have to either delay the Studio and the Mac Pro update or speed it up a little bit and get it out there so that they're all, because what they want to, what I think the better way to talk about this is, here is the new M3 chip, and here's how it expresses itself across the line. And you can have ultras and this and that and the other thing. And I just think that the splitting the Pro one, because now you have Pro. If anything, the Pro should come first. If you're going to do that, then release the Pros with M3s first and say, look at how great this is, and we'll eventually get to the lower end ones. And the reason that they don't do that is because the Pros are such a small part of their sales and the laptops are such a large part of their sales that they're not doing that. But for the Pros that own them, it's a bummer, and I feel like they really should sync that up. But it's the reason that they're doing it is because the priority for sales is to sell laptops because they own that market. And when you see like when you go to it's not that everybody has Mac laptops. Obviously, it's still a very small percentage of the market. But if you walk into a marketing department or even an airport, there's I don't see a lot of PCs, that are there, so it's an interesting, they own this certain part of the market and they continue to extend that. Next question.
Next one comes from Jeffrey Powers, Madison, Wisconsin. Here on the panel, the Apple event used beast grip hardware on the iPhone 15. Has anyone used this camera cage before? And he's got a link to it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I haven't used it, but it does look interesting in that they have a selection of lenses, including this anamorphic lens down here, so that you can add a anamorphic lens to your iPhone and shoot 133 on the square aspect ratio chip and give you a wide angle using a lens, anamorphic, and stretching those pixels in post. So that looked kind of interesting. Other than that, it looks like your typical cage that you can mount a phone into. I don't think it offers any type of stabilization or anything. It's just a way to hang on to it and mount lenses in front of the existing lenses.
Yeah, B-Script's been around for quite some time. I think the first time I saw them was six or 7 years ago. A lot of social teams use B-Script. We see them a lot when we're working with a large social team from an ad agency or whatever. B-Script is probably the one. Beast Grip is probably the one that we see the most. It's very, very flexible. It has a lot of lens options. It is, the small rig and the B-Scripts are the two that we see probably the most. But B-Script is in a social team. What we see from social teams is probably the one that they use more often than any of the other ones. It does give you a lot. And I think that Apple's spreading the wealth a little bit. We saw a small rig in, for some reason, I like the small. I will say that personally, the lens options look better in the B-Script. I like the small rigs. I feel like they feel more rugged than the B-Scripts. That's why I have small rigs is mostly that I don't need the lenses. And they look interesting. And some of the newer ones, I haven't looked at it for years, but I always felt like the B-Scripts had this they were well built, but they just had too many things going on in them compared to the small rigs. But we saw a small rig in the Rodrigo video, and so I think that Apple's probably going to, when they show behind the scenes, they're probably going to kind of spread the wealth among different ones because you can do the shot with all of them, and it may be up to the filmmakers, but it's also something to kind of think about there. But they're very good rigs. Both of them are very good rigs. Next question.
Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. What's a good portable monitor for that's about 8 to 10 inches, HDMI, for using with an ATEM and possibly outside on dry days only, work using with a drone? Budget is $300 to $500 US.
Well, obviously, when you're working outside, what you're really looking for is you're going to be looking for nits. How many nits is the monitor? The ones that we bought at that price range have typically been Lilliput. And I don't know. They're always putting out new ones. I know that they since I used to buy them direct, we bought so many Lilliputs that we stopped buying them on Amazon and started buying them directly from the company in bulk. So, so I get emails of like, hey, this is the new one. And I know I just got some new ones there. I can't find them right now, but Lilliput is one that that I would look at. I think that when you say 8 to 10, it's kind of a weird size. But if you go to like you can get a Lilliput 5.5, just to put it in perspective. So it's a little smaller than what you're looking at, but it's 2,000 nits. HDMI monitor for $279. And so they've got, I'd have to look at, they've got some 10-inch ones as well for $329. And, when we started buying them, they were very, they're a little rough, but they were cheap, and I still have some laying around, and they worked pretty well, and they've gotten a lot better over time. Field World is another one that is out there that people use. I haven't bought a lot of those just because I'm used to Lilliputs again in that area. There's a 10-inch one that they have here that is 1,500 nits, and you really want at least 1,000 nits on your screen. But 1,500 nits, $359, and that's a 10-inch Lilliput, and that does both HDMI as well as 3G SDI. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I'm going to just support that. I use a Lilliput here in my teleprompter rig, and the thing I like best about it is that they often have HDMI pass-through, so you get an input and an output, which is a little hard to find. They're really good in teleprompters because they also have on board the ability to flip and do the rest of that stuff. So you can use it for both field work and teleprompting. It's been really solid for me.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I have a Feel Good 4K and a Andy Cine 4K. They're identical, so they got to be made by the same people. 2,000 nits. I have to turn it down all the way because if I turned this up, you'd probably see the light on my face. Well, maybe in a different situation. They're quite bright. And then my next question is, what about small HD? We haven't heard that yet.
They're just a little more expensive. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, small HD is a little more expensive, but good. I have the Feel World sitting right in front of me as my confidence monitor. I like those, but here's an alternative. If you get like a Magewell, and then you plug in the Magewell NDI, HDMI to NDI, and then you can use your iPad with a program called Top Director, which captures the HDMI, and you can actually purchase color tools, being able to apply LUTs and things like that to that, and you can use that as a remote monitor that's detached from the ATEM.
Yeah, and I think I would list, the what I was looking for, trying to keep between $300 and $500. That's why I suggested the Lilliputs. As you go over that, there are the three big brands that I'd probably look at are Atomos, Small HD, and Blackmagic. The Blackmagic 12G monitor. I don't own one. I just haven't been able to justify it. But man, I've seen it in production, and it's a very pretty monitor. And it records and everything else. Atomos and Small HD all record, but those are the big three that once you go up above $500 that I'd start to look at. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Comparing the M32C rack mount audio mixer versus the X32 Behringer for the same thing, which one would be the panel recommend and why?
They are different in the sense that the M32C, I believe, doesn't have any I/O, so it's all expecting you to use Dante or something else like that, or Ultranet. So if I remember correctly, let me look at this. It is a digital rack. Now Behringer used to make one that was the X32 core, is what they called it. And what they did is they moved it to, I think this is essentially what the X32 core was before. So if you look at it, it's not a, I can't get a good photo of it up, but it's only designed for digital I/O. So I think it has one card you can put in it, so you can put a card in for Dante. So it has all the things that an X32 has, just no analog I/O. So there you go. There's a good picture of it. So that's the difference. So I bought some kits with that and just found that every once in a while I still needed some I/O in it. So we had a bunch of the Behringer cores because I was like, that's all I need. I just need Dante. And I just found having if it had 4 channels of analog, I'd be okay. But usually it's like, I need to deliver something out, and I can't do that. So I would still recommend the X32 over top of the M32 rack mount because I think that. But if you're absolutely sure that you're only doing Dante and you just want a mixer, a hardware mixer for that, then it works. The interface is just the same, and it works just the same. So it's, and I've definitely used the Behringer version of this. I haven't used the this version because every time I get close to it, I go, oh, I'm going to need 2 in, 2 outs. So next question.
Next one comes from Brody Hefner in New York City. These revealing CT scans by Lumafield, presented by Adam Savage, demystify USB and Thunderbolt cables so effectively that I think every cable consumer should see them. What do the panelists think? We had those on the show before, and man, they're cool to see those.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the main thing is I just wish that they had to do that for everything they put on Amazon so that we actually knew what we were doing. I mean, I don't have a CT scanner at home, and so so I think that, but I think that we should, somebody should do as a service, just do CT scans of all of them, and then put them in their reviews. Like, this is what this one is. This is what this one is. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I thought I detected a microtumor in one of them, but yeah, a lot of people don't realize that in those molded chip connectors, there's a lot of chips that are in the molded connectors. There's a lot of chips built into a lot of those, especially the USB-Cs and the HDMIs, that can have leveling chips or amplifier chips, or A to D converters are all built into the actual shield on the chip shield on the connector itself.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Jens Olson in Sandpoint, Idaho. Could you create a spatial audio track of a live concert performance recorded with an ambisonic microphone? And how would that compare to a traditional studio mix spatial track? That's a QR code, by the way.
Yeah. So we've done that. I mean, we've done some version of that, and I think that if you go back and look at our ambisonic to 5.1 that we did with Mickey, I think that you get a little sense of what that and we had a whole microphone array set up. So I'm not going to try to explain all of that because there's a show that we've already done that covers that. But anyway, so you can do it. It's not going to be the same as if you had all the individual tracks. When you have all the individual tracks, you can put them in a lot of other places. If you want to kind of create that experience, you may be able to do that fairly effectively. It's not going to be anywhere near the same as having the individual tracks for it. But what you can do is there's a variety of plugins that will convert your ambisonic to 5.1 or other things, so and so you can use a first order, second order, third order mic. It's going to build that space, and then you can convert it down. And again, we did a whole thing on it, so I would take a look at that. But I would, if someone said, "Are you going to do a live?" And I do live stuff where we do it to either 5.1 or 5.14 or other things like that, and we definitely want all the tracks. Not only do we want all the tracks, a lot of times we want to know if the artist has a click track, and if the artist has a click track, we want them to come in and track things with us so that we can understand what they're going to do, and then we start putting in, we start building up the automation for it and everything else, because to really get the full value out of a surround, you need a little bit more time. So anyway, those are things to think about there. And I don't think ambisonic is. I mean, we've done some ambisonic at concerts, and I don't think it's a great experience. It's okay. I think ambisonic works better when you're grabbing just kind of general stuff around you. So we've done that a little bit with our coverage of events. Quick reminder, even though we have still a lot of questions, just reminder that we will do a little bit of a countdown clock discussion, and then we might go back to questions. So so just because there's a lot of questions, we probably still are going to get through them all. If you have more questions, you can go ahead and ask those now. Vote on those questions. It really does make a difference when we have this many questions for the producers to be out there voting on the questions. So please vote on the questions. And if you are not in Makana, you can go to askofficehours.com. I'm sorry. Well, you can go to that, but you can go to askofficehours.global. And if you go to askofficehours.global, you can actually ask those questions any time of the day. So we're bringing a lot of these questions. You'll notice that Bill's saying, "Oh, this came in from the QR code." That the time it comes in is all over the place, and so it's really worth, when you think of the question, just go to askofficehours.global and throw it in. All right, next question.
Wes Decker in Fort Worth, Texas, comes up with this one. Apple's new M3s with their new GPU architecture that includes hardware ray tracing, hardware mesh shading, and dynamic caching seems ideal for the Vision Pro. I'm curious if the panel thinks it might ship with the M3 and if anyone might want to buy me one. Get in line, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, if you, I'll be happy to buy you one. I go in my with my spare cash. No, I still think that they're gonna they may go to the M3. I mean, the release date is in the right timing for them just to silently shift to. It would make sense for them to put out a test units in M2s and then go, oh, by the way, here's an M3 and it actually does 120 frames per second and it does more, so I don't think it's out of the question that they could run move to the M3 and surprise everybody. And then Apple's probably not surprised by the bump. It probably made sense to give them out there at that speed. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an M3. I thought about it a little bit last night, and I think that they could absolutely update it and give us something faster. I don't know if they will, but it's quite possible. Next question.
Cindy Drozdarf from Erie, Colorado says, how about I have about 13 USB accessories to plug into my Windows desktop. What hubs do you recommend?
And this also comes in from the QR code.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, OWC has quite a few, but they don't have 13. I think they have a 14 and an 11, out of which there's Ethernet and HDMI, maybe in the display port. So I think you're pushing the limit at 13. Maybe more likely you're going to get a 10-port USB type hub in a single unit.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There are a few 13 port hubs out there, but it's not going to be 13 all USB plugs. It's going to be 13 ports that have an Ethernet, have HDMI, and then, of course, some Ethernet there. When you start plugging in more stuff, especially at your Windows PC, and we don't know what the hub is that you're plugging into, you could be plugging into a USB 3 plug that's doing 5 gigabits per second, or you could be plugging into a USB-C that's actually technically a USB 2.0 port, or Thunderbolt port, which can do 10, or Thunderbolt 3, which can do 10, and Thunderbolt 4, which can do 40. But the whole point is that when you start plugging in a whole bunch of stuff into that 13, that's going to start affecting how you go. I have hubs where I plug in, and then I'll plug in like capture card and a SD card, and then I'll plug in the mouse, and I start using the mouse, and it'll start jittering all over the place because it just doesn't have enough bandwidth to work while the other two are working. Plus, it gets really hot. OWC pluggable, and both of the ones that I recommend have their own power to it, so that you don't have to rely on the computer to power your devices. And then plug in the least powered items into the hub, like for instance a keyboard, a mouse, capture cards. If you're doing capture cards, try and do one, maybe two, but don't do too many, because once again, it's got to talk back and forth, and it might slow down. You might have a big bottleneck in there.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney. Can't hear you.
You're muted, Courtney.
All right. Sometimes the click doesn't work. You can find these multi-port USB 7-port gears for about $37, USB 3.2 Gen 1. Well, that is maybe charging and super speed. But I would suggest getting a couple of those and plug one into the front and one into the back, because a lot of times the front USB ports on a desktop PC and the back USB ports are on a separate chip, separate controller chips. So you get two different lanes of USB 3 going through two separate controller chips, and that way it will split up the bandwidth between the two controller chips. But you could do it that way and get your 14 ports with that 7-port that I just showed.
And Bill.
Yeah, I just took a quick look to see if there was anything out there, and there are some 13-port ones. You don't want anything passive. You need something that has a plug-in. This, unfortunately, is only USB Type 3.0, so it depends on the peripherals. If you have new things, I probably wouldn't buy something with 3.0. Courtney's right. You want to go with the latest standard to get the long-term things, but you don't really need one of the high-powered data ports that converts it to 27 different kinds of signals. In this particular case, you're just looking for a USB extension, so I'd go with the USB 3.2 multi-port that's not terribly expensive. These are only about 20, 30 bucks.
Good. Courtney?
And one thing I forgot to mention is if you're going to use your mouse and your keyboard and your PC has some USB 2.0 ports, plug those into the 2.0 ports and don't put them on these split out hubs. That way they're not going to interfere as much with all the other cameras and other devices that you can have on the 3.1s.
Next question.
Gabriella in Malaysia says, I run live video production with an ATEM constellation, Ultra Studios for key fill, deck links for Zoom, ISO, and multicams. Program is to live streams or the occasional iMag. Would a sync generator be important in my workflow, and how would it help?
So the iMag is the place that it'll make a difference. So if your cameras and your switcher are synced, well, and basically, that's the big thing, is that the cameras and the switcher need to be have a gen lock. If they're gen locked together, then what you'll end up with is much lower latency, a couple frames, which makes a huge difference on iMag. It's not going to make any difference for the other stuff. But what it is going to make a difference is having your cameras and your switcher locked together, so that the switcher doesn't have to wait for up to a frame or two to sync that frame up with the cameras. Next question.
Thanks, Gabriel. Funshak Darji in Dharamshala, India says, greetings, panelist. What do you need to power an ATEM Mini from a car battery?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, you would need a converter from a car battery to plug into whatever plug you're going to be doing. I'm thinking US plugs, but of course, where your area is, of course, that type of plug. I would highly recommend instead looking at some of these these batteries that are at least 10,000 milliamps that have the ability to do like a jump start to your car. I tested one early on that I had, and I can't remember the name of it, but tested one early on with my ATEM Mini, and it kept that thing running for about an hour, 15 minutes. So that's where I would go. It's smaller, it's more compact, and of course you don't have to worry about open connections sitting on a card or anything like that.
Go ahead, Courtney.
You could probably get away with just an adapter that plugs the cigarette lighter plug into a coaxial DC connector, because it's 12 volts and it's plenty of amps. It's not going to be regulated, so it probably could get 13 volts out, 13.4 volts out, to 12 volts out, depending upon the state of charge of your battery. Another possibility is to make something. If you're a DIY person, you can get these little buck converters that are DC to DC converters and output 12 volt regulated at about 2 amps or 3 amps, up to 5 amps, and just put one of those in the end to 12 volts in, 12 volts out. You can adjust the voltage so it's exactly at 12 volts regardless of the input voltage. And that would give you a nice regulated DC output. And there's probably some things out there that do that, but just a cable converter will probably work.
Next question.
Scott Mueller in Germantown, New York has this one. Has anyone used a TourBox for Premiere Pro editing, or a loop deck, which is better?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I always tend to compare them to just the JKL keyboard shortcuts that you have, and that really improves your efficiency. Of the two, the TouchBox and TouchBox or the loop deck, I kind of like the loop deck a little bit more, but neither of them would be my answer, because all I'm really looking for is a nice weighted shuttle jog knob that is not some tiny little piece of plastic that I got to like push around with my fingertip. I don't really like that. I just like that very solid weighted jog control. I even bought an Avid Artist control, which I use with my Avid system. And in the beginning, it was kind of cool. I had flying faders and I had a jog knob on it. But before too long, it just got pushed off to the side. And JK&L is your friend, so you may not need either of them.
Good, Bill.
I'm kind of in the same place. Here's the TourBox. It's these little controllers that do specialized functions. I guess if you're constantly going to just be in the same seat and you're never going to move and you're never going to go on the road and you're never going to take it anywhere, whatever peripherals you want, you will normally get used to. Like Mitch, though, I find that with all the keyboard shortcuts I have available in my edit system, I just want my hands on the keyboard at all times. Even reaching out for a mouse is something that I do not do anymore, because I once shot an overhead picture of how many times I had to fling my arm out to take care of all the to the mouse, back to the keyboard, to the mouse, back to the keyboard. And it just looked really inefficient and silly. So I keep everything touchpad on a laptop and I never have to move my arms. And I think that makes me faster and more fluid than having to reach out to an external controller. Your mileage may totally vary.
Yeah, I will admit that I own both of these and I have tested both of them, not with Premiere, but with other apps. I just find myself going back to the keyboard. Like I just don't like I just can't quite get myself, and I have like all kinds of hardware devices. I'm like, this is going to be the hardware device that I use, and it's going to make me so much faster. And then I'm like, back to keyboard shortcuts. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
If they could take my my HyperDeck shuttle from Blackmagic and adapt it as a remote control for my Premiere Pro, I'd be very happy. It's got a great knob on it, and the start, stop, play would be a nice little addition. But like all of you guys, I like to keep my hand on the keyboard, and the mouse is a distraction. You don't want to go unless you have to.
Next question.
Andy Toy in Waterloo. What's a good camera or phone to use for stills and video at fast sports events like Formula One?
Camera or phone. At this point, the phone is probably this is where you start to get to want to have something a little bit more, so to get great photos from a race, assuming that you're going to get a good position. That's where you start to want really long lenses. You're going to want to, find places where where they're going to come around the curve, and you're going to have some time to shoot them there. And so I think that's the real challenge for you. I think phones are hard to shoot this kind of footage with specifically. And of course, when you're taking photos or stills, remember that there's two different problems you have. If you're shooting outside and you're shooting video, you want to keep that shutter speed to be just twice whatever your so if you're doing 30 frames a second, you're at 1/60th. You don't, if you turn it up to 120 or 1240 or whatever, you're going to end up with a problem where you don't have, the motion blur looks weird. It looks very stuttery. So what you're going to need to do is for video, you're going to need ND filters if you're outside, so that you can maintain that process. You're also typically in most cases, you're going to want to stop down a little bit. So both of those go together, because you're going to want a little bit more. Things moving fast, you tend to want a little bit more depth of field. But with stills, of course, you can turn your shutter speed up, and so you can be able to shoot during and it just depends on how much motion blur you want when you're taking that photo. Yeah, good, Courtney.
Yeah, Alex covered most of it. I was going to say for stills, you want to get a very faster shutter speed, so you might want to set it to a little higher ISO and stop down a little more. But the problem is the stuff in the background that will be in focus, so you kind of lose the effect of speed. And what a lot of guys like to do is pan with the car while they have the shutter open with a slower shutter speed. That makes the car be more in focus and the background be highly blurred. It gives much more an impression of speed in that case. So in that case, you'd want to go with a longer shutter speed, shutter stays open longer than a shorter shutter speed, which will guarantee that fast-moving objects are more in focus, have less blur.
Next question.
Robert Spabity in Poland says, I watched the Central European Rally this weekend on YouTube, with Dirtfish mainly having interviews on site recorded with an iPhone and action shots by Red Bull and so forth, captured with high-quality cameras. Is this the way sports events are now being produced?
Or more and more, yes. The cell phone, for stand-ups, the cell phones are doing. I think at some point someone said the cell phone looks pretty much the same, if not better, than the 2/3 inch chips we're using for those things. Do they work well with live production? No. Do they work well as doing pickups? Really well, to the point where I have a hard time, unless I'm doing kind of a real short depth of field and I want to be artsy and everything else. If I just want to grab that footage, you have to remember that these rallies, most of that footage is kind of throwaway. Like, no one's going to watch it again. And so being able to, just grab it and be super portable. Now the kits, oftentimes, I don't know what they used here, but oftentimes the kits for the phones become a little heavy, because they start putting all the stuff on that we saw for the Apple event to make them look better. One of the big advantages that they have is they have a cell coverage or Wi-Fi. And so, what people are getting used to is being able to shoot those clips and upload them really fast. And so and especially if they're on a local Wi-Fi network and the server is somewhere that they can get to, they're able to push these much faster than they would with traditional video. So traditional video, they got to pull the memory card and they got to go this way and they got to do that. Here, they're able to pull it immediately. And if you look at what's happening now with Blackmagic Cloud, they're going to be able to just as soon as they hit stop, it's going. And same thing with camera to cloud. The camera to cloud for Frame.io, they're able to deliver these in near real time back to the system. And so I think you're going to see a lot more of those pickups coming from iPhones. Next question.
Evan Troxel in Talent, Oregon is up next. Has anyone here recorded a roundtable conversation using an Insta360 camera just for the video portion, not audio, and then split the footage out into 4 talking headshots to cut between? Anything to watch out for in that scenario?
Yeah, Jason Snell. I haven't done it, but Jason Snell's doing it. Like he's using the Insta360 to do that right now, or he might be using the GoPro, but it's either the GoPro or the Insta360, and he's doing exactly what you're talking about, which is he is using it for one of his roundtable things. I think that it seems to work pretty well. He has a whole process to it where he brings it in, and I guess there's some software that he can cut to very quickly, and so you can just cut to the folks. And I think that they even are now working on. They have some software that just you can identify it, and it'll go to those places based on the audio. So I don't think the video quality is very high. I think that it's okay, for that. But and I think you get video out of it. But he seems pretty happy with it. I guess I'm used to bigger cameras and more stuff. So I would rather use a couple of the Insta360 links and put them up there, and then have some presets where I can kind of jump to them. We've used those in the past, and I feel like that's been a better experience than what we're talking about here. Anyway, next question.
Again from the QR code system, this time from Wes Decker again in Fort Worth, Texas. I want to thank you all for the warm invitation to join the panel yesterday. I'm not sure if I'm in the same league, what league, as all of you, but I could try out for Office Hours Jester if there's an opening. I think there's people in line for that. I signed up at officehours.panel. Jester didn't work as a descriptor.
I didn't know we I didn't know if we had a league. I didn't know that there was a league. I got left out of the league conversation here. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, if you want to join us for the show workshop, it's a good place to get your feet wet, see how comfortable you can get. We've got all the bells and whistles that you would normally see. So it's today at 12 o'clock Pacific and 3 o'clock Eastern.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Cindy Drozda again in Erie, Colorado. If I plug a USB Type-A cable through an adapter into a USB 3.2 Type-C 20 gigabit per second port on my Windows 11 desktop, will I receive the full 20 gigabits per second?
No. So you're limited to the USB-A speed. So you can connect the two of them together, but you're only going to get that 3.2 if you've got the 3.2 speed, the 20 gigabits if you have the USB-C on both ends of that, and compatible USB-C. But if you go down to USB-A, you're definitely not going to get the speed. I don't know I think that the speed on the A is like 500 or something like that. It's very low, compared to it. So it gives you the compatibility, but not the speed that you're looking for. Next question.
Steve Uroff in Madison, Wisconsin. In the Blackmagic camera app for iOS, tapping the audio meters brings up a meter overlay with a gain slider. I can't move this slider. Does it require an external mic to be adjustable?
Yeah, I don't know. I have a bad habit of not really using my cameras for audio. Like I always do something separate to make that actually work. So I'm not sure if you need an external gain or not. And I haven't connected external cameras to it, but we'll take a look at it. I am using the Blackmagic camera more and more to make that work. Mitch, you don't have to do that. It's just a distraction for me. It drives me crazy. So please don't do that. Anyway. So so anyway, so that's the I lost my train of thought. Like I can't have anyone. I know what time it is. Sorry, I got a little lost.
Okay.
No one should signal to me. I understand what time it is. Anyway, so yeah. So we're going to have another hour here. We'll talk about countdown clocks here in a second. We have when we talk about countdown clocks here tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Korg Nano Control 2, which I'm really excited about. If you should watch the video on YouTube, sorry, I'm a little lost. You should watch the thing on YouTube from the Nano Control. I can't.
Is that
I
Chris's
can't get
thing that
back
he's
on the
doing
thing.
tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly. I can't get back on the
Chris is
legs.
doing it
So
now.
Here's what he wants you to do.
you only got a couple seconds. You got to manage
Yeah,
this
you
in
got
10
10.
seconds.
I made a super dense video. It's got a lot of information in it. Watch it. It'll help you ask questions tomorrow. We'll see you at 8 o'clock tomorrow.
There we go. Thanks. And now we're going to jump into the second hour. I think did we not jump into the second hour? Did we not go to the black? Did I miss it? Hold on. Did I? Okay. Yeah. You got to go to black
We
no matter
warned
what.
everybody. This is a little looser week because we got
Oh, system.
changing.
Okay, there's some kind of system issue, so we'll figure that out. So again, again, what we're trying to figure out, this is why we're not taking on external guests and why we're going to labs and why we're doing other things is to kind of figure out the system, and so we are, and right now the system is. It's not working. So anyway, so we're an active speaker until we get to the other side of that. So anyway, yeah. So what we're doing this week, next week, probably for a little while, is these little labs. And the idea is that they're not really a presentation. They're more of we're just going to kind of open something up and talk about it, answer your questions about it. Chris is going to do one on Nano Control tomorrow. He had a great video that is a great presentation. It'll be great open for a show. And then, Bill's going to talk about anatomy of a commercial on Thursday. We're going to talk about what's working and not working in the system on Friday. And then, of course, Saturday and Sunday we have. Now, the interesting thing about Saturday will be the same. It's just Q&A. Sunday, and I don't say just Q&A. I mean, I like the Q&A the best. I find the second hours to be fairly stressful. Anyway, so so the Q&As are the. I know that the second hours are necessary, but the Q&As are much easier for me to manage, which is why we do them on Saturday. Sunday is introspection, of course, and we talk about all the stuff that you want to ask about office hours itself. Anyway, so we're going to jump into to countdown clocks. So one of the things, and I'm going to try to grab a couple of these. I was having trouble. I had a keynote document and I couldn't find it. And I was like, I tried to make these labs so I wouldn't have to find things. And now I'm digging around trying to find things. Let me see if I can grab a couple of these here. The thing that I wanted to show was, one of the things that I have a pet peeve, and that's when people use off-the-shelf countdown clocks. So I will admit that I feel like, the countdown clock should be part of the show, and so it should look like the rest of the design that you have on a show. And I'll show you a couple examples of this, and then we'll talk about how I create them. Let's see if let's grab a couple of these. And again, this is a lab. It's going to be, I keep on telling myself, it's going to be a little more laid back here. So let's see if I can find another. Let's see. Let's see. I'm just going to grab a couple of these things. Oops. I made the mistake of hitting something that will open Photoshop.
While you're clicking.
Yep.
I think what's interesting, Alex, is that you have really taken the mindset that the show starts well before the show, and that there's some technological reasons for doing this. What do you use a term, cooking the system or heating the system, or I can't remember what it is.
Warming the edge.
Warming the edge. There you go. And that helps you get, all the bugs out. Everybody gets to see, oh, look, I'm looking at a signal that's actually functional. There's some music. I can make sure the audio is good. There's motion in it. I can see that I have a good signal. So anybody who's interested in watching from the top gets to see all of that. And that's why some motion in that
Yeah, yeah.
first bit
So
is important.
having a couple things. One is there are things to do before your show, and there are different levels of quality of what to do. The best thing to do before your show is another show. So the best thing to do for your show. So pre-show is the best way to handle this, which is we're going to warm the audience up. If you go to see, I don't know, any late night with whoever, I don't know, everybody's quitting now, so I don't know who's who anymore. But late night, the late nights, there's a whole show before the show for the audience. Why do they do that? To warm the audience up, to make sure that so there's a comedian that comes out and they tell you a bunch of jokes. There's people they're telling you, they're warming you up to tell you, you're part of the show. Usually the host comes out and says, "Hey, how's it going? I'm really excited to have you here." Blah 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 blah. And they tell, like Stephen Colbert told the famous story of his, like how he met his wife, in one of the pre-shows. Someone recorded that. So there's a lot of things that that the pre-show can do, and it's really the best thing to do is to do a pre-show of 20 or 30 minutes before your show. Gives people some reason to be there. Someone's typing and the mic's open. So the thing is that you want to so that you have the sorry, I keep on losing my train
That's
of
right.
thought.
It's an
I'm
audience
just having trouble.
management thing
Like
is
I
what
just
you're saying
like
essentially.
so anyway. So you have this one of the things to look at there is you have the pre-show. Now the second best way to do it is do movies. So do movies of take, like one of the things that we did. There was you can play an hour and a half of the movies that were done over the last year, and then you're going to go into a live stream, and there were lots of people watching because it gives them something to do. They know. Now the key is with all of these things, you want a countdown clock sitting over top of them. So you're either going to key the countdown clock over top of them because you want to constantly tell the audience this is when this is actually going to happen. So the worst thing to do is put up a still. So and what Chris was talking about earlier, if you have if you have this open, you want to have music in there and you want to have something moving, and that tells us that something. I had one where we had a still up. The live view had frozen. The live view had, there was a reason for it. The live view had not frozen. I had an SDI cable running, and this is one of the reasons I never use SDI bridges, like the little bridges between the SDI cables, is because some idiot grabbed onto the, decided they were going to feed their monitor with it because it went through a room with a monitor. They didn't have a feed of the program, so they just took my feed and didn't even work because it's going the wrong direction. Anyway, it was a dumb thing to do. And it's, so the live view wasn't getting any feedback, so it just sent a still. It just sent the last frame that it had. So I thought I was going, and when I went live, nothing happened. And the reason nothing happened was because there was no connection there. So having something moving in the background and exercising that tells you it is a pulse. It tells you that there's something that your live stream's working, that everything else is working. Having music there makes a big difference because it tells you that that's happening. Of course, it has to be copyright friendly, but having something back there, and you can get needle drop stuff to do that, and we do that all the time. But it also gives you control. So when you go live and you have some video going, that means now you can cut away from it. You're not going live, and then you have so many people go live, and they're like, "Are we live yet? Am I here yet? Can you guys hear me?" That's all because they don't have a countdown clock. So we started building all these countdown clocks. I'll show you a couple of them. I couldn't find the ones that I was going to show there, but I can show a couple here. So like with each one of these, this is a pretty boring one, but the idea is you can see that these are, we're making it look like the rest of the text, that's in there. You can see how we changed this one so that the countdown clock looks like what it looks like, just another part of the piece that's actually moving along. You can see like that's a countdown clock. So this gets into a much more intense countdown clock in the sense that, and this was just a sample of it, but you have but this is still us just working on those countdown clocks to make that work underneath layers and so on and so forth. So you can do a lot here. Here's again, each one of these, the thing to notice is not so much the design themselves, but in each one, we're telling you what it is, and it fits into the look and feel. Oops, there's Bill on the thing. I'll cover Bill up there. Anyway, so so what's trending here? You can see that there's the countdown clock there. So that is the the idea behind each one of these, and I've built hundreds of these. Obviously, I can't find them all today, but I built hundreds of them. And basically, we are always trying to make them feel like they're part of it. In some cases, they're very complex. We composite them into the scene. We make it all work. And so, let me open up. Let's see here. I'm going to open up Motion here. Now, I used to use After Effects to do this, but I've moved to Motion because Motion was a lot faster. And so it was a lot faster to produce these. And so I'm going to show you the basic construction of those and answer your questions. And so if you've got any questions, and if the panel has any questions, go ahead and let me know. If you've got questions here. So I'm going to cut to this, and this is here I am in Motion here. Now, what I do is I'm actually going in here and adding a generator, and under text generators, you can see Timecode. Now, the one thing I will say is this is a bit of a kludge, and it's really frustrating that I don't have more control over it. I don't have any idea what font I'm in to create that. Let's see here.
It's like a dingbats font.
I know. I was like, we have to look at this now to see what's going on here. Go into the text generator and go into format, and I have of course, Star Wars font. So that's the so there's
so it's
the,
in Klingon.
Yeah, no, it's in actually that is the language of the Rebel Alliance. So anyway, because I have that font, as you do. Now, this is a couple things about this that I do kind of neurotically is you'll be tempted to scale this up, but what I do is I move the size up here. I want to do everything kind of programmatically. I find that it's a little bit more predictable that way. And so the thing about this text generator, and I want to thank Mark Spencer for this. I was like, so what I used to do is I'd build this countdown. I'd have this and it counts up, and then I would simply reverse it. I would copy the layer and then, I'd copy the layer and then reverse the time that I go back and forth. And Mark Spencer said, "Have you ever thought about just putting keyframes for the time?" And I was like, "No, I have not." So here, if you look at this current time code here, you just turn that off. And if you turn that off, you can now it's nothing. It'll just stay at 0. And let me see. I'm going to hit J here. This is going to tell me how long my time. So my time right now is like some random time here. So I'm going to change this to, we'll change this to 5. And oops. There we go. So there we go. So now it is set. And so now I can go back to my time code here. And if I go to my text generator, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the keyframe here. So I'm going to set a keyframe at the beginning here, and I'm going to go up to 5. And then I'm going to go, now what I'll do is I'll go to the end, and I'm going to set this to 0. Set another keyframe here, and I'm going to set it to 0. Like that. And now,
I don't think you set a keyframe. I think you moved to the previous keyframe.
I'm sorry. There we go. Let's do this. There we go. How did I? Labs. All right. So here you can see the here. So now it's counting down. So there's the countdown clock. Now, one of my big complaints about this. So this is a nice quick countdown clock here, but I've got all this extra errata, and there is no way to get rid of it. There's no way to turn it off. It is so annoying that Apple doesn't have a way. And in fairness, I had the same problem in After Effects. I'm using Timecode, which is the thing that counts up and down, but no one thought that maybe I want to turn the frames or turn the hours off, so that I can just have the time here. And but so what you have to do to make this actually work is draw a line. Basically, in the group that's holding on to it, I'm going to just draw a mask, and now I have my countdown clock. So now the countdown clock's there. Now, the flex, by the way, is that I take this mask and I actually, if it's set to, and one of the things I first do is I scroll through and I make sure that the numbers aren't changing, that they're doing monospacing, which it is right here. And then what I'll do is I'll bring this mask in, so I'm not showing that 0. And you want to get just outside that 0. And then you scroll through it. And the reason I'm scrolling through it is I want to make sure that my mask isn't getting cut off. Now, the nice thing is, and you'll have to change it if you change the font, but now I have a countdown clock, and that's it. Like, you can comp this over top of anything that you want. The key is that now, instead of being some, kind of generic countdown clock, I have a countdown clock, and you'll see it get clipped here, and I can always fix that. But you can see it here where I can change the size, but I can also, make it any font that I want. So if I have a client that wants a certain thing, and I spend a lot of time, so here's like Black Ops 1. And if I go back into my rectangular mask and I open that up a little bit, so that's an entirely different one. And so I've now have this, this is where, so see how it's going back and forth. So this one is not monospaced, like the Avenir one was. And so what I'll do is I'll go back to Timecode, and down here I can turn on monospace, and it's going to get really far apart. So now I've gotten it further apart. But what I can do is I can take my tracking and pull it back together. And the difference is it's harder to get exactly the spacing you want when you go to monospacing, because it's going, and this happens to be a very hard font to do this with, because to cut the 0 out there, and I may not be able to effectively do it. There we go. Okay. So what I did is I changed it to monospacing, and that means that, and if I click away from that, you'll see it. But I want to be very careful that I clipped. This one's really hard because the characters are so close together, but this one, it works. And so now I have it, and hopefully you can see that the value of being able to really have a countdown clock that mixes into whatever your client hands you or whatever you design as your countdown area. And now you have it as a group. You can move it around. You can get it to where you want it. You can, do whatever you need to do to put that countdown clock exactly where you want it. In one of the nice things about Motion that I like is the ability to also go into here and go to appearance and say, I want 3D text. And so it doesn't look very 3D yet, but I can go in here and say, actually, instead of single, I would like to have multiple. Now it's going to should make a copy of it. Let's see here. There we go. So the front face, we will make, say, cracked paint on the front. But then on the front edge, I'm going to go in here and say I want to do metal. And we'll do kind of a, let's see, aluminum foil. Let's try that. So now you have this kind of, and we can make it thicker. So like the depth, there's the, so now I'm starting to make it a thicker piece here. And what's kind of cool, and I can make this, let's say this should probably be darker. So we'll make that like an iron. That gives it kind of a dark area. And if it's over something brighter, you'd probably see it better. But the point is now it's a 3D object, and it's going and rendering it is just as fast as it was before. So, being able to build more complex ones, and this is probably not the best. Oops. See, do that. And I just undid something that was important. Let's see here. But I can, and this is, I probably picked one of the harder ones to do it in, but what I can do here, of course, is go back at any point in time and go in here and, change whatever that, what these are. And they can be, again, in 3D. So if I go into, let's see, try to find one that's not so great. Oh, if you could do Star Wars if you wanted to here. There's your Star Wars countdown clock. In time, if that's super geeky, by the way. If you do a Star Wars show and then you do the countdown clock in Star Wars, and everyone's gonna have to figure out what to do there. And with all of these, you can, I have Avenir, I have so we have that there. The go back in here, we can increase the depth again. We can also increase how big the front round is. So we can have the weight, or front edge size, so that can, kind of get increased here. So, and again, I can play with that mask to get that right. So if I just go in here and I'm gonna, open that mask up a little bit to make sure that, so with each one of these, you might have to do that. But you can see how these can be, very customized to make that work. And then you just hit render. You put it wherever you want it and you hit render out. And that's really the whole of the lab here, is just to kind of explain that this is something you can build out. And so I think that when I see people using countdown clocks that are not customized, I'm like, it's not that hard. it's not that hard to make a good countdown clock, and it just really frustrates me to watch it. To have someone just kind of clump in a countdown clock, I feel like I can do all these controls. The funny thing is that most of this stuff is supported by the OS and on a Mac, so you could probably build an app that would do all the things that I'm talking about. But I think that I think that the countdown clock is part of the show. I think that's the thing that I want to keep on underlining. It's part of the show, and it's part of the branding. It's part of everything else. It's introducing people to that feel, and I think that it's important to make that available. So anyway, it's a $50 application that you pay for once. There's no subscription, and on a Mac at least, and you can do this in After Effects. The only way I know how to do it in After Effects is to do the whole thing that I talked about, which is that you pre-comp it. You build the countdown clock, you pre-comp it, you take that comp, bring it back in, reverse the speed, reverse the playback direction, and then you do the same. It's the same thing. And neither of these, and I have suggested to people that it would be great if there was just a countdown clock plug-in for Motion, or even better yet, Keynote, that just did the countdown. Like, just do all the things I just did, but just have it. All you have to do is take the Timecode plugin and give me something that, even if you just took the time to call and said turn off, just had a button that says turn off hours and seconds, or turn off hours, turn off seconds, whatever, like, that would be enough. Anyway, no leading zero. Like, there's like a couple buttons that you would add to this, and then it would just be a countdown clock button, thing. And so, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So Alex, I noticed, and I'm launching Motion as I speak here. I want to do a Final Cut title? Is that what I want to do?
I don't. I just do, because I build the countdown clocks in Motion. You could, but I'm saying I build the countdown clocks in Motion, and I build the whole thing I build in Motion. So I just do a Motion project. I don't build it as a Final Cut, but you could. Gotcha. So the thing, again, if we didn't have this little problem with the mask, you would be able to very easily build this as a Final Cut plugin or generator that would just generate countdown clocks all day long. But there's not any way to do it where there's not a little bit of tweaking. I guess you could build, rectangular mask, you could expose the right and left position of the rectangular mask in Final Cut. That'd be a little weird, but it'd be possible. So you could theoretically build a generator for Final Cut that would just do this. Anyway, it's again, I think it's really important. I find it fascinating that I've been building these for over 10 years, and no one has built a tool that does it well. Like it's just, that looks pretty and does the thing, and it's amazing. And it's in my head that someday I'll build a countdown clock. It'll be a business. I'll make $1 million, pay off my house, all that stuff. I think that it's a crazy thing, because it looks so much nicer when you're doing live events. It looks so much nicer to have a real countdown clock that really feels like you built a frame, and it's part of the branding, and it makes it work there. Let's jump into the couple questions that are there.
Absolutely. The first one comes from Robert Sababity in Poland. What's the best way to handle an overshoot when your countdown clocks reach 0 and you can't start the show?
So, funny thing about that, there's a couple different ways we handle that. One is that we say we'll be starting soon. So starting soon, and so we throw a starting soon slide up, and now you're kind of in Never Never Land, because you're going to stay starting soon, and everyone knows that they're just waiting. You'll lose a lot of people. What we have found, it's kind of a funny thing, But what we found is scrolling back the countdown clock actually is more effective than doing starting soon. So you literally just say, you reset it, like you go, well, how much time do we need? Oh, we need 8 more minutes. And you pull the countdown clock back to 8 minutes. And what you'll see is a bunch of chatter in the comment section where everyone's laughing. Ha ha ha, they're running late, they're having trouble, but they don't leave. So they laugh, they'll laugh, but they won't leave. If you put up a starting soon slide, you have 90 seconds. Like that only buys you a little bit of time before you just start seeing your viewership just go, like they just don't know, because they don't know when you're coming back. And that's the key. And that's why also, by the way, why an opening act is way better, because we have tons and tons of shows where we do pre-show. Pre-show starts 20 minutes out. The main speaker is late, and the pre-show, what we're doing behind the cameras, we're going like this. Stretch. We need you to stretch. And they'll stretch. We had a George W. Bush impersonator stretch for 20 minutes. He just kept on going like this. I don't know. I was super impressed though. He stayed in character and just kept on doing his thing. But so that's the big advantage of having someone live on, is that they can give you softness of, okay, now we're going to this thing or whatever, and we'll be going to this thing any minute, blah, blah, blah. So when you don't do that and you have a countdown clock, you're better off scrolling the countdown clock back. It feels silly and people will laugh at you when you do it, and it's worth it. It'll still hold. It'll hold, but try not to do it twice. I have done it twice. Try not to. And it's almost, for us, we build our system so far ahead. For us, it's almost always an issue of the talent being late. So yeah, next question.
Next question comes to us from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. Can you explain the different types of bevels in the countdown characters?
Yeah, I mean, they're all the 3D bevels that you can see here. So if we look at this here, there's, let's see if I select the time code. I mean, let's see here. You have round. I mean, you have beveled. It's hard to see. This might not be the best font for this. Let me see. Format. Let's see. Book. Go black. See if that works. You can go in here and even increase the weight a little bit, make it thicker like that. And so you can see there's bevel. Each one of these, they have all kinds of different, and if we can, let me see if I add a camera and switch to 3D. Oh, now I just ruined that's why we don't do 3D cameras. I was like, why don't I ever do that? It's because you get all those numbers back. But if we grab the camera here, let's see here. Anyway, so you can, all these bevels, the best way to do this is just to go through and decide which ones you like. I have to admit that I don't know as much about the bevels, and the reason I don't know about the bevels is because I like rounds. Like I don't ever use anything other than rounded. So there's a lot of these that are available to me, outlines and all kinds of other things that it's really cool, but I just use the round. I find that to be nice, and I think that I find that to be the most pleasing one. And of course, you can, a lot of the stuff you can go in here and you can go, I'm going to do something darker like chrome on the front, and then you can give it kind of a nice, this one's kind of crinkled, but I could go back and go, I want something that is more like, so this is kind of a nice 3D look when it comes to that process. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Eduardo Augustine in Panama. The same you did with motion can be done in After Effects or DavinciResolve with timecode keyframed, and it says a question. So he's wondering if it can be done in After Effects or Resolve.
When I did it in After Effects, timecode wasn't an option. I could use motion math to make it happen, but I didn't do very much of that. It just seemed like it was too complicated to do what I was trying to do. And so and Resolve I've never tried. And I have it in my head to go back and resolve. I have to admit, the thing that really got me hooked on motion was the fact that I could do 3D titles. So being able to do 3D countdown clocks immediately had me like, well, motion's now my tool to do that. And so because I do like that, I don't use the 3D titles as often as I thought I would, but when I do, it's really cool. So anyway, and you see, we're actually not using the motion. I started with motion. The ones that we do at the beginning are not motion, and the irony is I'm about to move to 3D clocks made in Cinema 4D, so it's a whole other thing. because I want to do. And the reason I'm going to Cinema 4D is specifically because I don't have control over the environment maps inside of Motion, so I can't load an environment. You get the environments that Motion gives you, but you can't change them, and you can't put your own in, and so that's why I'm moving away for bigger, like really complex ones, like the ones we're going to do for office hours. Next question.
Michael Tan in San Diego, California. Is there a difference between a custom countdown clock with real-time countdown time for the event?
Right. So I build these, and these are videos that go out. I have thought many times about the possibility of building these inside of Unreal Engine, so that we could dynamically control those. And I think that there's a possibility of doing that, and I don't have a solution yet, to do that yet. But I have thought that a real time, whether it's Unity or Unreal or other things, would actually be a better solution, because then we could drive it to the time, and we could speed it up and slow it down and do a whole bunch of other things. And I just haven't had time to figure out how to build that behavior into the system. I think that, right now I'm using Timecode because it's really fast and easy. My plan with Cinema 4D is actually to uh, my plan with Cinema 4D is actually to build a behavior inside the nodes of, this runs at every second, this runs at every minute, this runs at every, and so the turn is not connected to itself. It's just these numbers know what they do and over the time, and we have to get it just right. But to build it so that they just change. The funny thing with Cinema 4D is I'm thinking about can I rotate them in, kind of thing, that kind of thing. And that's the part that I'm still working on. And the idea there is to be able to, my goal with Cinema 4D eventually is to be able to put any font I want in and have it just do it, and just to be able to build the 3D model for it and not have to do a lot of work every single time I want to change the font. So we're going to work on that, like I can do right now with the one side effect, by the way, with Motion is that when you do the 3D, Motion still has the problem that Unreal has, which is that it doesn't anti-alias perfectly. So when I do 3D rendered, you can see, I don't know if you can see it or not, there's a little bit of aliasing that goes down the side here. The way I fix that is I do actually the Motion projects at 8K, and then I scale them down to 1080p, and that oversamples it, and it gets rid of that aliasing. So that's the one unfortunate part of 3D rendered stuff that's trying to work in real time, is that it doesn't anti-alias well. And even in the highest quality, you still see it a little bit. All right. Oh, there's one more question, I think, for countdown clocks.
Danny Grizzle came in late from Longview, Texas with, I use mimoLive as a CGI front end to an ATEM DSK. Putting a countdown clock on a mimoLive layer is too simple with all the fonts of the host Mac.
Yeah, I think you can do it I think you can actually do a lot of that with mimoLive. I think that one of the things that you want to do is just make sure that it really blends in. You position that countdown clock. I think that you can comp that in, and so it's just a matter of comping it. My argument isn't so much that you should do it in Motion. My argument is that the countdown clock should look like it belongs with it. It's not something you just turn on and it's in the center of the screen. Think about the design of that plate and make it part of the branding. Next question.
Chris Sabato in Albany, Oregon has an interesting one. Why not build a countdown clock in SPX?
It's a good question. We should take a look at I'll talk to Tuomo about what it takes to have kind of a turnkey countdown clock thing. I mostly don't know how to do it. So this is a way that anybody can do it inside of a relatively inexpensive application. But I don't have a solution for the other ones, because this is how I do it. But yeah, it sounds like it could be useful there. Yeah, next question.
Douglas Carmichael's in next with, I'm starting to experiment with Motion and the timecode generator for the first time, and I noticed the numbers judder a bit, even though I put them in a fixed location. What could cause that?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, is the monospace. So you want to look at, when you look at this here, and we go into format, you have to turn on monospace right here, and then they'll stop juddering. Now, that also means you're going to have to close up the tracking on them. So if they're juddering, some fonts judder, and some are monospaced and some are not. If they're not monospaced, you have to drive them to be monospaced, and then you pull them together, and then it shouldn't move at that point. So that's what's causing that judder. Next question.
Next question looks like it's a general from Paul Wallace. So, if you have three or four monitors set up, can you use a program like remotepc to operate it with 3 or 4 screens at another location? Is remotepc the best software for this? That's a QR code question.
Yeah, I think that you could use. I mean, there's a lot of different remote PC. There's Parsec. There's Teradici. So there's a lot of different ways to control those. But you should be able to get to all those monitors from there. Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Among sound people who run the mixer, is it more common to see a concert in stereo sound or mono sound? I asked to end it between 2 other friends who can't agree to disagree.
Go ahead, Bill.
My experience, the bigger the show, the more likely it is in mono. They do not want phase problems and stuff like that, particularly if you have all sorts of delay to delay a stereo signal to the back parts that actually physics creates time delays. I think it's simpler to work with a single signal. The one kind of caveat to that is I know a lot of mixers who, if they're doing anything that has stereo sources, will do a record in stereo of the show, but they're still mixing for mono for the crowd. That's what I've been run into with the people I know. I have one friend who does sound in big concerts, and that's what he's always told me.
Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. Where do you find Mirror Studio? A, equipment list. B, layout plan for gear with connections and positioning. C, architectural elements like HVAC, soundproofing, walls, windows, and ceilings.
I see what Paul's doing, and I completely approve. So let's we'll work on that. I actually don't know where that diagram is. We've been publishing. We have been publishing like how we do this as best we can and explaining it. And John Wallace was able to build one mostly based on that. So we'll see how he built that list, and we'll see if we can't build out a list. But I would love to see other people replicate what we're doing. So anyway, so yeah, let's talk more about that. Next question.
Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada says, is there only one nuetrik connector brand, or can you price compare with others that make the connector? That's a QR code question.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, nuetrik is just a brand name of a common interconnect like XLR XLR connectors or RJ45 connectors or Speak-On connectors. But it's a brand, and they're known for basically the engineering of the back end of the connector, not the connection part of the connector necessarily. So it makes them easier to disassemble without tools, grasp the cable better. Those designs are all patented, and that's why you buy the nuetrik brand. I don't know if there are any knockoffs yet. I don't know if their patents have expired. I don't know if there's any cheaper versions of nuetrik that are using the same nuetrik designs that are patented. So that's why people use the brand names.
Next question.
Next question is from Joe Kidd in the Bay Area in California, and he says, is the lack of a dedicated AV1 encode acceleration in the M3 family of chips cause for pause?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I just looked it up, and it says Apple confirms that there is one in there, an AV1 decoder. So Apple confirms M3 family has AV1 hardware decoding. It's an Apple News website thing. So
it's decoding, but not encoding. That's the question.
Okay. Other
Hey,
side of it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was just going to point that out. Yeah, he's talking about encoding, which is a much more intense process than decoding to do well, and time-intensive process. I might point out that the next version of the Intel chips has AV1 encode and decode and hvac and H.264 built as a separate part of the processor that's not part of the graphics chip itself. So even if you plug in an external graphics card, you still have access to the on-chip hardware-based encode and decode if you're going the Intel route.
Yeah, I think that the decode is still very useful. It means that if something like if Zoom supported AV1, which you could get AV1 out of it, which would be great. So I think that there are some advantages to AV1, especially as it relates to things like Zoom ISO and so on and so forth. But I don't think that I do think that eventually we want encode, and it looks like Intel's a little ahead here, so that we can be part of that ecosystem and send that in and be part of that compression process. Although I have used AV1 with my M1 Max, and they work just fine. So it just takes up a little bit more of the processor, but it's totally capable of doing it. Next question.
JJ McKenna, Santa Venetia, California. How difficult is adding a physical Ethernet upgrade to a Bambu 3D printer? The unit I ordered only supports Wi-Fi.
So hard. Go ahead, Courtney.
I think it is difficult. You might have to, there are probably some solutions out there that would give you a Raspberry Pi connection to the USB port with Octoprint, and then that might be able to give you a supported physical Ethernet connection. I don't know why, because most of your talking to those, I have Wi-Fi connections to all of my 3D printers now, the Creality printers. And the bandwidth is not very highly required unless you're going to be pulling high-def video out of them. But if you're just sending commands to start, stop, or you're uploading models into the printer and telling it to print, it doesn't use up a lot of bandwidth, and Wi-Fi should work fine. It's only when you get into the problem of having built-in cameras that are built into the printer and you want to monitor that print in real time, high def, then you might want to use an Ethernet adapter of some sort. But I don't think the USB ports on the Bambu Labs support hosting a USB to Ethernet adapter. If you could find a cheap one, plug it in, you could try it, but it has to support it in the firmware.
And I have to admit, with my printer, I've had it now for years, and we use USB for it all. Always, like I just never have gotten it. Like it's because it's printing for so long, and it's not like I'm printing out sheets of paper. It's like 14 hours after I get handed to it, it's going to be there. We've had a tendency, even though it supports Ethernet, I have a tendency to just take over a USB key and put it in, and I don't know why. I don't know if that's really useful, but my son and I both do the same thing where we just don't put it on the network. Next question.
Next one is circling back to countdown clocks. Eduardo Augustine in Panama says, how would you integrate the motion countdown keyed over pre-roll videos?
So the cool thing with motion is that you can export as Apple ProRes 44444. So you can export it out you can also send it as a ping sequence, although that'll be a very large ping sequence. But you can do a ProRes output and then use a key fill out from an application that'll do that, or out of so you can do it either as an application, something like over the air CG or other things like that. Or you can put it out of a hyperdeck or anything that supports key fill from a video file. And then you can put that out as its own little piece. Again, something like mimoLive or other live things. If you're only doing 2D countdown clocks, you can do that in a lot of ways. But if you're doing it out of motion, you can render it out with an alpha channel and then use it in a variety of places to make that work. Go ahead, Chris.
Alex, did you cover monospace types and the jittery?
We did. We just turn on monospace. I talked about it a little bit, and then Douglas asked another question about it, and I just outlined it. But to go back to it, because I think it's probably the most important part. is this one little thing down here that says monospace? So you got to turn that monospace on inside of your format, and then in the text generator format, you want to turn monospace on if it's not a monospace font. And then it'll be really spread out, and you got to move the tracking in to pull them all back together. But that's,
I suspect that's there to beat the problem of kerning pairs.
Yeah. No, it's the reason it's jittering is because of the kerning pairs. So that's so what you want to do is you set monospace, then it just monos it, but then they're all spread out. So then you pull them all back together, and they won't look as good as they did with the kerning pairs, but it still works. And a lot of fonts are actually monospaced. I was surprised at how many that I have that actually don't jitter at all. But if they do jitter, then the way to fix that is the high-end fonts all jitter because they all have kerning pairs, because that's part of the deal. But the monospace selection, again, down here it's under the text generator, under format, and down here you'll see the ability to set to monospace right there. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's back again, this time with, I've been experimenting with Universe and have successfully been able to display OSC messages from my DAW. How can I display those messages in the interface without their OSC address?
Hold on a second here. Um, yeah, I'm just taking a look here. And it's yeah, so yeah, I have to. I don't know the answer to that one. Sorry, I somehow closed a window on myself here while I was doing this. So yeah. Next question. Sorry.
It's actually funny. I was laughing at the next question because I love it. Joe Kidd in Bay Area, California says, how might one secure iPhone 15 Pro Max to a drone system? Gaffer's tape?
Yeah, I
It'll
do not
work.
I do not recommend
don't know.
Gaffer's tape. Yeah, that would probably not be the right way to go. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Apple does this simply for the PR, obviously, because most drones these days have great gimbal-mounted cameras, and if you're going to stick an iPhone in there, you're not going to probably have the gimbal mount. I did find this $13 mini pan tilt camera platform anti-vibration camera mount with 2 servos and for aircraft for first-person viewers. So this is designed to mount.
$13?
It's
Wow.
only $13, and it comes from Amazon. Yeah, it's
Somebody
such a
3D
deal
printed
for
that in their
you.
basement.
You know, have you ever
I
heard
don't
of
think I would trust my $1,000 iPhone to a $13 connector to a FPV drone, which is flying very fast through a lot of
Yeah.
dangerous things.
Have you ever heard of Temu? TEMU?
Yeah. The kind of blowout wholesaler.
No, it's not even blowout wholesaler. I had to buy one because I saw Temu makes one that's a U87 Temu, and someone was using it.
U87?
Yeah, for
Neumann?
$26. And I was like, here's the worst part is I bought one just to find out. Like I was just like, I have to know. I have to know.
Just to tear it down and see what's in it.
Yeah, I was like, I'll spend the money on it just to.
And
I don't know. It's going to come next week, so we'll throw it in.
You got to do a live teardown. We got to open it up and see what's inside.
So we'll see.
It might be funny if a real U87.
It was somebody. I was in a meeting yesterday, and they're like, "Oh, I'm using. How do I sound?" I'm like, "Oh, you sound fine." And they're like, "I'm using this thing," and I was like, "Well, it sounded fine." So I'm gonna buy one and see. And they have one, just in case you're wondering, Chris. They have one for the TLM 103 they have a.
I've just heard that Temu is one of those do not go there companies that they're super shady.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they said it. I want to see what happens.
No, the damage is done.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm connected to Temu because anything you say ends up showing up in my. By the way, yesterday we were talking about the iPad magnetic to Visa mount thing, and Alex was like, I'm gonna drill and tap and epoxy and blah, and within I think before the end of the show, I was rifling because I had to walk away.
Yeah.
I was rifling through the Instagram, and it's like, boom, there's an ad for exactly the thing that you were talking about. Here's a Visa mount with a mag thing and the iPad. And
what are the chances?
The robot overlords are listening.
And I don't even have it installed on I don't have Instagram on my phone, so I don't know. So it's you. It's not me. It's you.
It was your brainchild.
Next question.
Robert Sabavity in Poland still. Did anyone watch the podcast with Twitch CEO Dan Clancy or Senpai Gaming? He had major challenges with audio and video. Is this just his style?
If it is, it shouldn't be. CEOs should be ashamed of themselves. I see a lot of them do this where they just don't. They're like, oh, I'm not going to spend it. It's got to feel informal. It's got to feel whatever. And you can do that to some degree. I mean, you can not have a mic in the frame. You can do a bunch of things, but we're way past that. Like where it's okay to show up, on stage with flip flops and cutoffs and a t-shirt. Like, I mean, I get some people can do that, but I get that he may not want to look like he's working too hard, but there's a lot of ways to not look like you're working too hard without looking completely not good. So he should have thought about it. It's a streaming company. Next question.
Al Trivet in Carmichael, California. Any thoughts on the ruling in this AI copyright lawsuit case? He's got a link there from the Hollywood Reporter. I haven't looked at it. Is anybody?
I think that the judge threw it out, and this is the challenge that artists are going to have, is that the judges aren't going to get they based it on this, but they're like, the argument is, well, everybody bases something on something. Everybody heard a song and then they play a song like it. There's a lot of chords that are common between pop songs. There's, like it's really easy to undermine this conversation. And I think that that's going to be the challenge that they have there. I think that the problem they have is that everybody's been holding back their AI development because they don't know where the courts are going to land. And once they know, which is a high probability that, but before it was like the low probability they could win, but not zero. So everyone's kind of like not putting all their chips in. As soon as they lose enough of these cases, they're going to flip the switch, and suddenly it's going to go super wide. AI. If you think AI has been crazy now, wait until they're not worried about copyright. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
The law courts thing. There's a thing that has happened a lot in recent years where the confusion of a judge saying there's not enough evidence or there's not enough there to even bother bringing this to the courtroom oftentimes gets confused with the judge threw it out. Meaning it's not a thing, or he was guilty or he wasn't guilty or whatever. And a judge saying, I'm not going to try this in my court doesn't mean that the thing was guilty or not guilty. It just means you don't have enough here. Go back to the drawing board, come back when you have a real case. And that, I don't know if this is what is happening here, but
it is. And it's actually the judge protecting the plaintiff in some cases because, when you go into appeal, you can only use what you showed. Like you can't keep on adding more data. So the judge is just saying you don't have enough yet. Like it's as an adult.
I've watched a lot of Perry Mason, so I think I know what I'm talking about here, Alex.
Yeah. There's a whole like what's admissible and what's not admissible after the court case. You can have new evidence arise, but if the evidence occurred and you didn't put it in or you didn't challenge it, so that's why everyone says objections. Like objection is not trying to change the case. It's setting it can be, but a lot of objections are setting a pin that you can appeal against later. Next question.
Old Perry Mason or the new Perry Mason, Chris? I just got
old Perry Mason. The new Perry Mason.
The Raymond Burr Perry
Come on,
Mason?
I can't. How did they even think that was going to be okay? Anyway, sorry, that's a whole other thing. I spent a lot of hours watching Perry Mason when I was a kid. The idea that they put a new one is sacrilege.
Raymond Burr.
All right. Great.
Alexander Hamilton. Oh gosh, let's go for it. Alex 40 Golner, Zone 2, Northwest London. How would you convince Apple executives to invest in the future of Apple Motion?
Well, first of all, I'm going to wait until next week because Apple isn't listing Motion or Compressor in Apple apps, in their Apple apps thing, which makes me very nervous about the future of Motion, of what's happening there. I think that in some cases, I feel like I have let Motion users down in the sense that folks like me and haven't done enough videos to show people how amazing that app is. I mean, we've done some pretty high-end things. I have to admit, the amount of Motion I used after there was some update where our plugin didn't work anymore, Conduit, because Conduit basically put a nodal compositor inside of Motion, which was really powerful. When that stopped working, I didn't do as heavy a work in Motion as I used to. But I think that it's a really, really amazing. It's probably the best. Those two. What's funny is that it's not in the Apple list on their website, but they are the highest bang for your buck of any app that you can buy from Apple. Compressor and Motion, like what they can do for $49 or whatever, $50 is unbelievable. For that single price. And so it is amazing. I think that what's missing is really just education, people understanding how to use it and how to do it. I will say that Motion is a little quirky in the way it handles keyframes and other things like that. And that I think that needed more. It needed more people to build more training, and I feel like I could have done more about that. And so we'll see what happens. I am committing myself that if I feel like Motion's going to survive, I plan next year to do a lot more Motion tutorials just because I feel like it's important for people to understand how to use it because it's super powerful. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. What could conceivably have caused the NFL Sunday ticket buffering issues? Would it be the path from the venue to Google or something in Google's own pipeline?
I don't know what the answer to that is. There's a couple things because it didn't affect the entire ticket. You start to think that, well, it might be. There's a few things. It could be transport from the specific venues because it wasn't every game. I watched some of the games, and unfortunately, it didn't affect the transmission of the Steeler game because Steelers lost, and I got to watch that in full quality. And so it could be a transport from the game. The game, these are big stadiums and things can happen. Also, you can end up with regional brownouts. So regional systems and that can be a handful of different things that are processing those things, and those things can affect. So if a regional backhaul went under, you could end up with losing transmission from 6 or 8, which is what it sounds like happened, 6 or 8 games, that are in that region. And that's there was one, we had one where we lost the Northeast because someone cut one fiber cable. And what it did is they were digging and they cut it. And what it did is it caused a cascading failure. Like it had all this stuff and it started putting more pressure on different servers. And before you knew it, that everything was slow and suddenly internet wasn't working anywhere in the Northeast. And it happened to be right when I started a live stream. So we were very, so you have to look at down detector to know whether people are seeing, when you see a big region where there's a whole bunch of things that are down and a bunch of different services, oftentimes, and every time it happens, it's less likely to happen again because usually it has something to do with AWS, and AWS fixes something in the back end, and it doesn't happen as much again. I don't think that that's the case for Google, but a lot of times you want to look for brownouts. That might have been it, but I'm completely guessing. I have no inside information. Next question.
Next one comes from Dave Troutman in Edmonton, Canada. Would anyone hazard a guess about how dynamic cache works?
We're still doing research on that. I think that it's a matter of when the app comes up of being able to dynamically allocate the graphics processing power. Like how much of the graphics processor am I going to get when I'm starting to work there? And being able to keep on having multiple operations running, and which could make it considerably more powerful because it's not caching in time; it's caching actual capacity there. So yeah, go Bill.
Yeah, they said it's maybe a boon for gaming on these new chips because it just caches what's necessary for the next operations or something like that. I still don't understand it very well, but it looks like it'll help in particularly high I/O tasks like fast gaming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all, because we haven't used it yet or we haven't seen it used yet. I think we're all kind of guessing at the moment, but we're going to get some more information over the next week. Next question.
Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. For the Brother pTouch Cube Plus label maker, is there a particular tape that's best for producing non-removable labels?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it depends on what you call non-removable. Not that the adhesive is non-removable, but there are security labels that you can get from Brother. I haven't found any third-party generators of these security labels that they're just tamper evident. In other words, if you remove them, the adhesive on the back forms a checkerboard then on the label. So this prevents people from taking barcodes off of a expensive item and a cheap item and putting it on an expensive item and then checking out that kind of tampering that goes on because it would render whatever's on the label unreadable or at least evident that has been removed and put on something else. I don't think they make it in any type of adhesive that can't be removed. It's a pretty permanent adhesive. It's difficult to get those labels off. But if you're looking for tamper resistant, they do make some. Brother makes them, and they're called security labeling tape. So just look for that.
Yeah, and when you started saying I want stuff that you can't take off, I don't think that the cube is really what you want to use. What you want to look at is take a look at the Brady brand. So the Brady brand, I think the one that I have is a BMP 41 is the one that I have. I have a kit there. That stuff will print on metal. And those metal labels will not come off. Like they become part of whatever you're labeling. And so, but Brady is it's considerably more expensive. These are like $400 or $500 labelers. But these labelers have a lot more options when it comes to the kind of adhesive that you might add there. Next question.
Neil Avelito in Boca Raton, Florida. Is it interesting that Apple is positioning the M3 Pro 66 PE cores as a heavy multi-loads and the M3 Max 12.4 cores as a more dedicated load? What are your opinions?
Well, I think that these are, I haven't dug into that deep enough to know. Like I just, we saw it last night. We're still looking at the data. I have to, after the show, have to spend some more time on it, getting ready for Mac break. But I think that at the end, you're really looking. I don't think that you're going to pick a Pro over a Max because of one thing or the other. You're going to buy the Max if you want more speed. I think the Max will outperform the Pro at almost every level. Maybe not all levels, but almost every level every time you put it out there. All right. Well, there you go. We got through it. We had some issues today that you probably saw there in the back, and that's why we're kind of fiddling with this stuff. So we're working through these, and the kit has overall the transition has gone almost perfectly seamlessly. So an amazing work on the back end of figuring out how to make all of these things work. But that's what we're working through. Like, what does it take to put it in? This is an entirely new kit. So you saw us jump from one kit to an entirely different kit in one day, and then we tested a cloud kit on a Sunday, and then we came back to this new kit, and we're going to run this new kit for the next 3 to 4 weeks, ring out all the things so that it's totally stable. And again, it's been really minor stuff that's happened there.
It's shocking how smooth the last few days have been.
Absolutely.
It's really amazing.
It's really incredible, to John Wallace, to the dev team, to the production teams, to everyone. Incredible work, just incredible work to have this thing working as smoothly as it has. The reason we cleared out the whole schedule for the next month is that I was like, well, it's just going to be chaos, and it hasn't been. So anyway, but I've already cleared out the schedule. I'm not going back. So anyway, and then our goal is to set up 2 more kits. One kit that you'll see us start in somewhere in November. We'll have another kit go up. And then in December, we'll set up the 3rd kit. And Paul, it sounds like, is working on the 4th kit. So Paul, we're expecting big things from you in is it Arkansas or Mississippi, or where was that? Where did
I think
we
he's
buy
moving
it?
to Little Rock, Arkansas.
Little Rock. It's somewhere
Aaron.
so we're expecting a whole nother kit from Paul. And he's asking for the schematics. So no pressure, Paul, but it's only, it's only $80,000. I mean, you can do whatever you want, you can put it together. You might be able to put it together for less. We'll see. So anyway, check that out. So thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you, of course. And thanks to the producers for all the great questions. Lots of great questions. We've had 2, we had this little lab thing. I don't know. We have to figure out the lab thing. I'm not sure if the lab thing worked when I put the lab in the middle and then came back to general questions, because then some people left, and then we were like, we did fine. But I think we'll have to think through that process.
Think maybe you just lab till you're done. And then,
or you, the question is decide how long the lab. Yeah, you might just lab until you're done. We had a lot of questions.
If you're let's just think about this. If you're hosting tomorrow, and I'm doing my thing, maybe you can interject. You can be looking ahead, going, "Oh, hey, based on what you're saying, here's a question. Let's."
Or we decide how long the lab's going to be and go a little bit into the second hour if we've got a lot of questions or something like that. So we'll have to think through that. Yeah. We've never done this before. This is what happens. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's more complicated because we have nowhere if you put stuff into the QR code, we're still working on it. There's nowhere to put them. So that's why we have to get to those. All right. We traveled 106,000 miles, 170,000 kilometers, and that is 840 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. It went black. I did the black. I was told to do the black. I did the fade to black.
It's freaking out right now.
No, they told me to do it. They told me to do the black. They said, go to Alex. You got to do the Alex. Please, JJ told me a little while ago to go to that. Yeah. So.
Oh, we could fade to black ourselves on our thing. That's right.
That's a switcher.
So
we can't roll credits.
I texted you about an office hours standard thing. I think we need to have a standardized dissolve rate. Some of the dissolve rates I'm seeing coming from people's desks.
I vote for the ATEM stock without change.
Yeah, the default is 2 seconds.
2 seconds.
That's
I think I do 1 second.
Do a whole show in that dissolve.
Yeah, I do 1 second myself.
Yeah. I try and change it, but it keeps changing it back.
Save start state.
Save
start state. All right, I'm out of here.
All right, see y'all later.
I will be keeping this room open for the remainder of the day. Anybody wants to